Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Cabinet meeting on the 10th of November 2020. Can I just ask all colleagues that are on the call to keep on mute, keep background noise down, please, and then just unmute if you're asked to come into the meeting. So we'll start with item 1, which is apologies. There are no apologies from Cabinet. Item 2 is notification of requests of members of the public to address the meeting. We've got 3. They are Miss Jessica Slater, Miss Deepa Bakrana and Jean Lineker. So we'll call those members of the public in to speak at the relevant items. So item 3 is minutes of the meeting held in public on 8th September 2020. Cabinet, are we happy to agree the minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you, and I'll sign them in the appropriate manner as and when. Declarations of interest, item 4. Cabinet, are there any declarations of interest over and above those that we already have recorded? No, okay. So we move on to item 5, which is announcements. So I've just got 2 or 3 items to mention. So one is the sad passing of former councillor Ron Pinnock, who passed away recently. And former councillor Ron Pinnock passed away recently. According to our records, he was on NCC from 2005 to 2013. He served on various committees, most notably Development Control and the Adult Social Care and Health Scrutiny Committee. So we send our best wishes and sympathies to Councillor Pinnock's, former Councillor Pinnock's family. And I've already mentioned to Paul Hanson that at the next council meeting, albeit it's a good while away, we'll do an appropriate silence and some comments around remembering former councillor Ron Pinnock. Okay, the next point is I'm pleased to say the trust became live on the Monday, the 2nd of November, and I just want to put on record the thanks to everybody that worked exceptionally hard to get the trust, the Children's Trust, off the ground, and we look forward to moving everything forward. We now enter a period of stabilisation, and we must keep the pressure on to make sure that improvement in children's services continues and is sustainable. But I'm sure we'll talk about that perhaps more on one of the items we've got in Cabinet coming up. Also mentioned the all-member briefing, Cabinet briefing on the 19th, Thursday the 19th at 5 p.m. So we'll welcome all members to that, and we'll be putting an agenda out hopefully this week. I just want also to send good wishes to Councillor Mick Scrimshaw and Councillor Dennis Meredith, who I know have been poorly, but we send them all our good wishes. So we'll move straight on to item 6, which is the Revenue Monitoring Report for the financial year ending 31st of March 2021, as at period 6. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Okay, well, you're going to have to bear in mind when looking at these figures, this is period 6 we are talking about, or reporting on rather, whereas of course we are now a third of the way through period 8, and a little bit's happened between then and now, as we all only too well aware. I'll go back to period 6, which of course is the half year, so that's a very, very significant time in any financial calendar. And what we're showing there is at that point in time is a 3.6 million underspend for the year. That's the year-end outlook. But also what was quite significant there, quite unusual really in the county's financials, is we have a write-off there of £2.8 million worth of bad debts. Now, the reason that this is at the half year, usually these sort of situations take place at the year end, where you sort of do provisions one way or another and generally balance what's needed. But we decided to bring this through to the half year, so really it's in preparation for the unitary. The more we can clear up and make the books cleaner, and the quicker we can do it, then we can hand over in good order. And that's one thing we've done. So the 3.6 million underspend forecast and 2.8 million write-off, quite a big number there. Okay, the situation really, I think if you turn to page 17, you'll see it there. It's in pretty good order, I'd say. The one that's adrift on there, if you look at the period 6 forecast variances, is the technical finance, and that's 656. The wrong way is the forecast, but of course that does include also the write-off. So other than that, everybody's in very good order. If you go down the table, you'll then see the 3.6 forecast underspend, and then we have a situation which shows that we're looking for the collection fund exposure, which is the rates and council tax of 18 million. And that will be accounted for in next financial year. So moving on, as you probably all remember, that we've been running two sets of accounts here for clarity purposes. One is the business as usual, which I've just spoken about, and the other is, of course, the financial implications of the COVID-19. Now, this again, you've got to bear in mind this is at the half year, and that's on page 30 for those that wish to follow it. And what we're showing there is the 35 million pounds that we've had from the government. We have a situation whereby 33 has been accounted for. There's 2.688 was already provisioned for, and therefore we have a 5 million pound emergency funding set aside for the recovery phase. So with that, and with the contingency we have, and with some further input from the government, we've got a fairly decent fighting fund for this next round of COVID. So the answer to the report here is that so far so good according to period 6. So far so good. Nothing I can report that I know about in 7 or 8 yet. But of course, we all know that we're facing a bit of an unknown. So that's the caveat. So far so good, but we have the COVID caveat. Chair, I think that's probably as much as I can say today.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. I've got Councillor Hakewell and then Councillor Stone. And Councillor Hakewell is speaking instead of Councillor Mick-Scrimshaw.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Obviously speaking as Vice Chairman of Scrutiny. The Period 6 Revenue Monitoring Report is the primary source of reference here, and I'm bringing this as Vice Chair of Scrutiny from the Scrutiny Committee. The additional costs to NCC arising from the impact of COVID-19 are listed in Table 3 on page 30, which was just referenced by Councillor Longley. They're itemised by directorate, and a supporting narrative appears earlier in the same section. The combined COVID-related funding streams from central government amount to 35.3 million, and the analysis of additional costs attributable to COVID-19, together with unachieved budget savings, shows that the funding covers the council's outlay to date. See the split in the table. Whether this is a coincidence or whether COVID costs incurred to date were notified in a request for 35.3 million to central government is a question in itself. Whereas many local authorities are reported to be suffering shortfalls in central government funding to meet COVID-related costs, NCC appears, on the face of it, to have fared reasonably well. The report clearly predates the current lockdown in England, which began on November 4th. What can legitimately be asked is, what estimates are yet available of the additional COVID-related costs in the context of the 4-week lockdown until December 2nd? Will the estimate be relayed to central government as the basis for a further financial package? To what extent is 2021 revenue budget judged to be at risk, and when is an estimate expected to be available? And lastly, Chairman, with the projected year-end underspend of 3.64 million, and based on the current ±0 effect of COVID-19 on the budget, is it reasonable to assume that 6 months into the financial year, the figure is in fact robust? Thank you for allowing me to bring that question to you.
Thank you, Councillor Hakewell, and we did receive them in advance, as we did Councillor Stone's. But if Councillor Stone wants to come in now, then Councillor Longley can address the points.
Thank you. I was also going to raise a question about risk, and the question I was going to ask, looking at this particular budget in terms of robustness, and risk on a scale of 1 to 5, where would you put it? And I'm asking that because in the questions I sent to Councillor Longley, I did note that an awful lot of forecasting is taking place here, and it makes me feel uneasy. So that means there's a lot of uncertainty there. I'm also a bit concerned that even though this is period 6 and we're now in period 8, we should be able to get a grip on how much of a deficit we're going to have in our budget for the collection of revenues. So I think we need to be really clear about what's going on with council tax, with business rates, with services and with charges, because these are the things that we're going to have a deficit on quite clearly because of COVID. It isn't at all certain that the government is going to meet that deficit 100%. So, we must by now have a better indication of what that budget gap is going to be and what we are going to have to do about it. But there are other questions I wanted to ask, and I did send them through. I don't understand the shutdown of business as usual. I do understand the additional pressures. I do understand COVID has to come first, but I do not understand why we're not recruiting. If we can do it for the shadow authority, I don't understand why we can't do it for the county. I really think it's questionable meeting our budget gaps, and I've said this often before, with staff vacancies, particularly at a time when the staff are under such huge, enormous pressure. I don't think that's the right way to manage the budget at all. It just builds up a lot more work later on and staffing pressures. And the same goes for building. If some building can go ahead, like it has at the borough with the Vulcan Works, why haven't the buildings mentioned in this report been able? I just don't understand it. If it can happen in one authority, it can happen everywhere. So, we should be conducting business as usual as much as we possibly can. I'd like to know what's happened to the Newton Europe contract during the COVID crisis and the implications of any change there. And I'd like to know where the money for food poverty has been allocated, please. I'd also like to know where the emergency fund came from as a matter of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. Councillor Longley, would you like to respond to some of those points?
Yeah, very keen. Well, thank you, Jim. Where are you? Yeah, oh, I got you. Yeah, most excellent question. Very, very pertinent question. And I have actually emailed you back with the answers, but it wasn't very long before 2 o'clock, so you probably haven't got them yet. But anyway, they are back with you, as indeed, Danielle, are yours. They're at the same time. I'll read the answers and I'll talk around them if I have to. The first item, you're saying that we fared fairly well. Well, you're absolutely right. And it's great credit to our officers to have effectively balanced the books. And then to answer one of Danielle's, just the last question, where does the emergency fund come from? If you look at table 3, you'll see that in fact covers that question as well. It's one and the same question with Jim. And fairly clear that that's where it's come from. You talk in terms the candle is not projecting a for the recent lockdown shows that the situation is fluid. Well, that's an understatement, to say the least. Right, you're talking about further financial packages. Well, the answer you'll be getting is that the council fills in a national monthly return to MHCLG to report forecasts spent on COVID. Additional funding of £8 ahead of the population was announced over the recent 4-week lockdown. The core business as usual budget is not judged to be at risk, and the additional funding is projected to cover any additional costs. However, having said that, we're in unknown territory, as we all know, and all I can say again is so far so good. We've got a war chest. It's looking good. What's before us, Jim? You tell me if you can. And the answer, but we're well prepared, but we don't know what we're going to face. But hopefully we're adequately prepared. And your final question, with the projected year and underspend of 3.64, and based on the current plus or minus zero effect of COVID on the budget, yeah, is it reasonable to assume that 6 months into the financial year, the figure is robust? Well, it's as good as it's going to get, Jim, at this stage, I think it's fair to say. Clearly, this is an estimate, forecast estimate at a particular point in time. The business's, as usual, budget is reported separately, as you know, the two sets of two figures. And the last two forecasts reported a 3 million plus underspend. Don't forget, we also wrote 2.8, which normally you do at the year end. And this reflects the current circumstances. So it's the best shot we've got at the moment. Period 7 doesn't appear to have altered it. If anything, might be a little bit better. Period 8, early days. And we're just going into the period now where things will change. And so we'll just keep a very close eye on it as we go along. But I come back to it. It's so far so good, Jim. And I think that's a great credit to our staff that it's in that situation. They've done sterling work. Moving on to a couple of Danielle's questions. I'll deal with the council tax one first. There's actually, it's quite clearly laid out in table 3 where that is shortfall. It's a 16 million for the districts and boroughs and 2 million for us is how it stands. But the important point, and coming to 18 now, again, that's an estimate of what's likely to happen. It won't be exact. It will change a bit, but that's the order of magnitude. And now that, of course, when we go in, will be accounted for next year. So it becomes one of the two unitaries problem, which is because it's collected during the year and accounted for in the following year. That's been the historic situation. You may cast your mind back a few years where we talked about that with an £8 million situation, and it went again just in that case. Well, this goes for us. Luck of how it's done. But that will be split by some mechanism. I don't know how yet. I'm not a party to that yet. Between North and South. But then you've got additions coming in, and the current situation is that the unitaries will write it off over 3 years, whatever the bad news is. So it's a first dump on the unitaries, but there we are. I don't know if we'll get government support for it. The indications at the moment, I'm not expecting anything, but you never know. We just don't know. We're in uncharted territory. So that's that one. But table 3 is the way to see it all. It's all clear enough. Now, the other thing I'd talk about is forecasting. You talk about forecasting and is this therefore robust? Well, you've got to start from the very beginning, really. That the budget itself is a forecast. I mean, we think we've got it right. We do the very best we can too, and we're a bit prudent in certain areas. But we haven't got a time machine. And if we had, we could tell you exactly what it is. But we haven't got that. And events come. I mean, Harold Macmillan said, "Events, dear boy, events." And and these. Who would have known COVID was coming around the corner when I stood up in front of you all and gave the budget in February? I mean, little we know that within a month, the thing had overtaken us. Well, none of us knew that. Certainly I didn't. So it is a forecast. It's and it will remain so right until the 12th hour. Of course, it'll in March 31st next year, then we'll begin to be precise. So it will always be, and what you've got to do is to look at the individuals that are making these judgments and forecasts and say, well, what's their track record? And I'd say this to you. I'd say that this team is 2.5 years into these budgets and forecasts, a little bit more now, and so far we haven't got it too far wrong. So now that bodes well. Having said that, we've got COVID ahead of us. It's our best shot at this tick of the clock. So hopefully that's sort of. Now I've also sent all your questions to Danielle. So again, you probably haven't got them yet because they only went fairly recently. And hopefully that'll answer your question. But if not, do come back. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Can I just bring in Councillor Smithers? Councillor Smithers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add really that this year the council is set to invest over £35 million in maintaining the roads across Northamptonshire. So far this year, the service has repaired almost 7,000 defects and responded to over 9,000 street doctor reports since the start of the financial year in April. We're continually looking for ways to ensure a cost-effective and efficient operation that repairs potholes as quickly as possible, and more importantly, to ensure that they remain fixed, so they're not temporary measures. We will recall that earlier this year that we invested into 2 thermal road repair machines, which have been operational on the network since early this summer. I'm absolutely delighted to say that these machines are operating incredibly well, and they've already repaired almost 10,000 square metres of road across Northamptonshire, and are outperforming our original business case. And it wouldn't be right if I wasn't to acknowledge Paul Helsby, who's recently left the business, who facilitated the meeting to get this technology within our county. So my thanks to him. Even after he's left, he's still got a bit of a legacy here. More recently, we received the first of our Roadmaster machines, which is particularly suited for repairing defects on our rural roads. And last month, I attended a site visit to see the machines in operation as it repaired the edge of a rural road in South Northamptonshire. I was again impressed with the speed and the efficiency and the quality of the repair that it achieved with just one operator. So one operator really is key to this, because it allows, efficiencies in staffing costs. A further Roadmaster is on order, and we expect to receive that very, very shortly. By using these methods of repair, we can restore most roads at less cost, and it demonstrates our commitment to continually invest in Northamptonshire's roads to keep our residents and, more importantly, our economy moving. I'm pleased to announce a further investment in our roads for this winter, thanks to in-year reductions across the spend in our Place Directorates. We are investing almost £500,000 in our highways maintenance team. This will be a one-off investment to bolster our maintenance teams during the hardest time of the year on our roads. As you can fully appreciate, ice and water are the nemesis of roads, and at this time of the year, the road surfaces suffer the most. This investment will introduce a further 3 highways gangs, which will repair the network on top of the existing 5 gangs, and there will be 3 additional stewards to investigate and defect reports and resilience during the winter months. I'm confident that through this investment, the residents of Northamptonshire will see a further improvement in our response times to repair defects and more repairs completed during the winter season. I'm sure that the members and residents will welcome this investment, as well as joining me in showing their appreciation for the teams that continue to work tirelessly on our roads through the pandemic of the coronavirus. Our maintenance teams are key workers and perform a vital service to our roads and remain safe for the benefit of our residents, businesses and visitors. This is why I've been so pleased to support the Stamp It Out campaign to tackle unacceptable abuse that's directed to our highways teams on a daily basis, and to stop the unsafe practices of small proportions of drivers who display traffic signs through our roadworks. I encourage you all to join the campaign and bring to an end to this irresponsible behaviour which puts lives at risk. Finally, I'm sure you will agree with me that this administration has been committed to improving our road networks, and that the challenge continues today. But moreover, we have demonstrated with good fiscal controls in place and well thought out planning with political and officer oversight, we can make a real difference. And this will lead us into the 2 new unitary authorities, demonstrating a marked improvement in the road networks across the whole of Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. I just want to make sure, put on record that welcome extra investment in the winter maintenance schedule that you've just mentioned there. And I also want to echo the points Councillor Longley made around the way the officers and the whole system at NCC has worked around tackling the financial situation. If you look back over the last couple of years, we've talked about that mantra around we're going to do everything we can to put the finances and the services in the best place possible as we transition to unitary, and that's a golden thread I would say, of achievement that runs through all three of the finance papers that we've got before us at Cabinet this afternoon. And that's testament to some very hard work, good quality work, and some really excellent people that have worked tirelessly on doing the best we possibly can to uphold that mantra and that commitment. I also want to mention children's and adults services. In the past, they've always been the two very difficult areas. We call them demand-led services that this council has found very difficult to get to grips with. And I'm very pleased again with the grip shown and the commitment from the service leads and the political leads to make sure that those budgets don't frankly cripple the council as we move forward. And I'm pleased to say it looks like we've got that well under control, with the caveat, of course, that we've still got the winter to come and the future impact of COVID. I also want to welcome the extra government funding that we've had. It's outlined in the report at 7.13. That is quite significant, and that's gone a long way to help us to be able to deal with this and have some money in reserve to deal with the future COVID pressures that this council, or indeed the two future councils, may have. So overall, I'm very pleased with the report we've got before us today, and I would ask Cabinet that if we're happy to agree the report.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
So we move on to item 7, which is the capital monitoring report, forecast outturn as of period 6. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you'll read, this report is forecasting 93 million spend in the capital for the year end. Now, my experience has been with this budget is that fairly typically that we don't hit that sort of number. It's considerably lower than it was some years ago, and one of the reasons is spelt out on 5.3, second paragraph. And I'll read it out briefly. It's only is new capital investment will only be permitted if it contributes to the achievement of the council's strategic priorities. And what I meant by that is we don't just spend capital on a whim, and so there's a consequence. It's much lower than perhaps it might otherwise be. And that's one of the reasons why the borrowings is as low as it is and is going down again. But I would come back. I bang on about this every time about productivity. I mean, having capital available, then we should be forcing ourselves more and more into productivity projects, and it's still wide open for that. We've still got a few months left of the year, and hopefully that will continue onto the unitaries. So capital for productivity reasons, or and I think transformation is the figure that is the words being used. I always call it productivity. I think this report is not controversial, and so I'll leave it at that, Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. We've got Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I do welcome this report. I note the 93 million spend by the end of the year forecast, but I'm very pleased that Councillor Longley mentioned productivity, because I think ever since I've been on the County Council, it's been one of the things I've mentioned at least 2 or 3 times a year, because productivity in the UK has not fared very well. I think the best it ever did was under a Labour government, but we'll leave that as said. The point I wanted to make on this report is on page 43, and it's in terms of the Corby Town Fund Walking and Cycling project, which is grant funded and forms part of the cycling network schemes, which of course is highly important to keep the health and welfare of our residents fit and healthy going forward. But we need that more now than we ever did with the current crisis we have. So that's the only point I wanted to make, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report, and I'm pleased to see under Homes to support fostering, investment of £250,000. Obviously, this will alleviate pressure on the revenue budget, but importantly, it will help to support stable placements for children and ensure that children are placed in foster and adoptive homes with their siblings where possible. So I'm pleased to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Longley, is there any other comments?
Only very briefly, Chair, and that thank you, Bob, on the productivity. I think we're clearly very much in tune on that, and I think that Councillor Wendy came up with a very good example of it, actually. With fostering, not only is a very good thing to do, and it's expenditure of some capital, and you get a revenue benefit as well. So it's everywhere you look. That's good. That's an most excellent productivity gain with a great outcome all round. So with that, Chair, I'll hand back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Cabinet, we're happy to agree the recommendations.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Move on to item 8, which is the Treasury Management Report, Q2 2020-21. Councillor Longley.
Now, I'm a bit sad on this one because I find this the most interesting report of the lot. I think that the best way to look at this is probably on page 50. And this shows that the projected borrowings, and if you look at page 50, it's got the forecast outturn, and down in the total net borrowing, it's got a figure of 475, 476. Now, you've got to bear in mind where we've come from on this borrowings, and a lot of that's to do with the capital, but it's going in the right direction downwards. And the LOBO loans, which is, I won't bore everybody with explaining what they are again, but they're dangerous loans. And they've come down from 150 million to 95. And they're actually reported in this report as of their maturity date, not of their call date, which means we could reduce that from time to time if we are able. Now, going on to the most important point, in my opinion, of all these reports, it's on page 53, and it shows the maturity dates of all the loans that we currently have. And we will be paying off 24.3 million this financial year. But then you look down into the future, and if you include this year, then for the next 10 years, we are obliged to pay off 75 million. Well, that's 7.5 a year if you include the 24 from this year. So, and then beyond that, for the next 20 years, it's 32 million. So once we've got through this year, which obviously we're well on the way to doing so, then the repayments on the maturity dates on the loans for the next 30 years are very, very low. This gives the unitaries a fantastic opportunity to eliminate all of the loans or do whatever they decide to do, because there's a very low burden for 30 years. So I think that's probably quite a high point to end on the Treasury, if I might, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Councillor Bone.
Yeah, so I'm like Malcolm. I actually particularly enjoy reading this aspect of the Cabinet papers. So 5.3 on page 50, Malcolm, you talk about particularly, but the report talks about Northampton Cricket Ground repaying 2 loans totaling 0.92 million in July. Just wondering, are there any further loans that are due for payment from the County Cricket Ground?
I'm not aware of any. We're pretty clean on that, and everything seems to be on the loan side of things to have repayments coming on rather well. It's, in these difficult times, we've not got any bad debts in that area that I am aware of.
Yeah, so that's really positive, and there has been a lot of concern about this area in the past, hasn't there? So I think the commitment to sorting out the borrowings and getting it down efficiently should be acknowledged, because I know the department has worked very hard in all areas, but I think this is a huge accolade.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Councillor Smithers, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to touch on that. It's good to see that this authority has collected its loans and they've come in. And one of the other points I'd like to sort of bring is table 3 on page 53 of the report, which is the borrowing maturity profile. I see this as an absolute golden opportunity for the 2 new unitaries to come in to either, pay down a lot of those loans or to or to spend. I think that's going to be a decision that will come to light as and when we sort of move forward into that new life, that new era. But you know, this is again a fantastic accolade to how the Treasury management has worked here to sort of get our borrowings and everything in order.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. I totally agree with all the points raised, and again, it's about honouring that commitment. There's been significant progress made in this particular area. Councillor Longley, anything further to add?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Cabinet, are we happy to agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Good, thank you. So we move on to item 9, which is an update on the Children First Northamptonshire Social Care Improvement Plan. So we've got Mrs. Jean Lineker registered to speak. Is Mrs. Lineker available? Mr. Hanson. Can Mrs. Lineker hear us? Ask Fiona to. Councillor Baker, if you'd like to introduce the report, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just for reassurance, we have had communication prior to this meeting with Mrs. Lineker, and we have replied to her questions anyway offline. So if she isn't able to speak to us, we have not ignored her questions. The improvement plan is a vast piece of work, as you will all have seen from the papers, and it is well laid out and documented there for everybody to see exactly what is happening in the children's service. It's in place to ensure that improvements are made in services offered to children and families in Northamptonshire, in line with the areas identified by the last Ofsted inspection carried out in June 2019. And certainly I know my cabinet colleagues are very passionate that that actually does happen, and we do improve the children's service. The plan allows progress to be reviewed at the Children's Social Care Improvement Board, which was set up following the government's introduction to Northamptonshire of 2 children's commissioners to oversee change in the service. The board is chaired by the commissioners, and other board members include Councillor Golby as leader of the council and myself as lead member for Children's Services. This enables the trust leadership team to focus on key areas for change in their management teams and wider staff. The progress update is a snapshot of the current position, and I would like you to note that we have strengthened the senior leadership team, and the majority of managers across the service are permanent. Tighter grip on staffing spend and strengthened workforce, therefore, is in place. Quality assurance activities evidence increase in the quality of performance, and work with partners is strengthened, for example, partnership for the early help strategy and the vulnerable adolescent strategy. And myself and Councillor Wendy Brackenbury, who is the shadow lead member for the North Unitary Council, had an exceedingly informative and interesting meeting yesterday with Clive Sewell, who's the AD for early help for Northamptonshire, and they are working exceedingly hard on many, many projects, which I think he's only been in place 5 months, but the plans in place are going to make such a difference in enabling us to get early help into families where they need it. I'd just like to sort of put members' thoughts at rest a little about the trust, because the trust, as the chair said, went live on Monday the 2nd of November, but we are currently working with the trust to make sure that membership involvement for myself and Councillor Brackenbury, who's doing the shadow role for the North at the moment, will be in place, that we have just as much contact with all of these services in the future that we had in the past. We still will hold the statutory duties in those two councils, and we do need to know that that improvement journey that we have worked so hard to start off here will continue into the future. So I would like members to be assured that member involvement is high on my priority list for the trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. We've got Councillor Jane Birch.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Baker, for that summary of the report. Obviously, this plan, this improvement plan, is crucial to the success of the Children's Trust as we move forward. And it's good to see that the majority of the managers at the moment are permanent staff. But throughout the report, there are indications of some risk and some weakness in this management level. Need for mentoring and coaching of the service managers, improving quality of management oversight and supervision, and improve their confidence and skills. Now, this is a really crucial part of the service, both for the outcomes and for the officers that are working within it. And I was wondering, could you explain how this is being addressed and who is overseeing this? That's one question. And the other question, obviously, is about COVID and the changes that might have been made to the delivery service during the current lockdown. The last lockdown threw up a number of weaknesses and risks that the families, particularly new parents with young babies, were not getting the kind of supervision and support that we would hope that they would have from health visitors due to problems with visiting. And are we managing to fend off any potential surge in the demand, and particularly with these health visitors to the new babies and the new parents who maybe be inexperienced and need a huge amount of support, both for the mother who's just given birth and for the new babies. Just very quickly, the contextual safeguarding toolkit. I'm very pleased to see this happening because I think it's something that gives us a much better understanding of the risks and vulnerabilities of young people outside the home. And I'd like to know when this is finalised and when we might be expecting to see this in operation. And lastly, of course, the recent Ofsted visit. When are we going to get some kind of feedback from you and some kind of report maybe? Clearly this is very important to us all to know it's a measure of the progress that's being made in children's services. And as yet we've had no indication of any verbal feedback that you might have had, or of the timescale of the publication of a report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wendy Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from what Councillor Baker has said, I'm obviously acutely aware of the need to keep the foot on the gas to maintain the momentum of the improvement journey as we move towards two new authorities. And you have my assurance that I will do my best to support that as we move, obviously, to the new unitaries. And just to reiterate what Councillor Baker said yesterday, we did have an exceedingly good meeting with the Assistant Director for Early Help Services, which bodes very well for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Before we come back to Councillor Baker, I'll just make a couple of points. And just to say, as Councillor Baker mentioned, myself, Councillor Baker and Councillor Brackenbury attend the Children's Social Care Improvement Board. And this report is very familiar to us because it's something that comes to us that we look through, scrutinise and challenge on a regular basis. And it's good to see that that's here at Cabinet today. I was going to put a question about the early help strategy, but that's already been mentioned, and some positive developments with how that's going. So the challenge moving forward obviously is how we keep improvements sustainable, and I hope Ofsted do recognise that, and I'm sure Councillor Baker will comment in a minute, how we do keep improvements sustainable as we transition through into the new unitaries. That is a big challenge for us as we move forward. So Councillor Baker, is any comments you'd like to come back on? Sorry, I just see Councillor Smithers has got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to just acknowledge the massive amounts of work that have been done by the children's team here at Northamptonshire County Council. And I guess history's been our worst enemy and time has run out on us through this authority. But, you know, there's been a massive amount of effort put in by the whole senior leadership team, the whole children's team, the member for Children's Services, Councillor Fiona Baker. And I'm reassured that, you know, Wendy Brackenbury, Councillor Wendy Brackenbury is also involved in that now. But, you know, we need to look forward to the future. It's a brave new world out there, and we need to ensure that we sort of put everything over we can to ensure the safety and the prosperity of all of our children whilst under our umbrella of corporate parents. So, you know, I'm confident that this will move forward, but I'm sure individuals within the organisation will keep a very, very close eye on this trust.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, would you like to comment on any of the points raised?
Just a few of them. First of all, I'd just like to make a comment to Councillor Birch and any other members who are on this call, that I do make this comment quite often, that I am open to any member who wants to speak to me at any time about the Children's Service. I have lived and breathed this service for the last nearly 18 months now, and I'm very happy to share with you any thoughts that I have of what's happening in the service if you should contact me at any time. As far as the oversight and the retraining, for want of a better word of describing some of our staff, that's because our senior team have recognised that there are some shortfalls in our staff that do need addressing. And in the past, perhaps before my time, we have not been as vigilant in doing training for people that we should have been. But we are now addressing that. We cannot do everything at once, but we have now recognised those people that do need some extra help, and retraining and mentoring of those people is going on. So forward thinking, that will be a very good thing. As far as health visitors concerned, I'm sure Councillor Birch knows as well that this is an issue for health and not for the council. We don't have health visitors on our payroll. And as far as Ofsted is concerned, Ofsted, as you know, are an independent body. We have no control over what they do or where they do, or what they look at when they come or when they write to us to tell us about their views. I can say to you that they were very positive in their verbal feedback before they left here, recognising that we are on an improvement journey. We came from a low base, as they probably would say, so I'll say that. But we actually are moving forward and upwards, and that's what they expect to see. We recently had this visit from them, which I think is called an assessment or assurance visit, just so that they could make sure that we are addressing the items that they put down on our original Ofsted inspection back in 2019. And I think from what they've said verbally to me that they are, but until we get the official letter from them, which I do assure we have not had yet, we will not know their exact feelings. I think it will be published early on in December. I apologise for the fact that I can't remember the exact date, but perhaps if Kathy Hadley is on this call, she may be able to give us the exact dates of that. But I can't remember the exact date, but I think the leadership team will have some indication from Ofsted for them to look at probably during November, and then they will release it in December. So any other questions? I haven't got an in-depth knowledge of the toolkit, but I'm happy to get the team to answer you on that question.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. And we believe the letter becomes published on the 4th of December.
Okay.
Just heard from the Director. So thank you for those points. So Cabinet, we're happy to agree the recommendations on the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. So we move on to item 10 is the Corporate Parenting Annual Report 2019-20. Councillor Baker again.
Thank you, Chair. This year, in the past, our Corporate Parenting Board report was not as an easy read as I believe this one to be. So I hope that the changes that we've made to this makes this an interesting and easy read for all members to have a look at, to actually see where their role as a corporate parenting is and what they would like to involve themselves in the future. Because this report lays out the actions of the board over the last year. So we have to bear in mind that this is a report for the last year. It's clearly laid out, easy to read. The board has a political cross-section of members, as well as partners from health, police and housing. The voice of our children is regularly heard, and it clearly lays out members' corporate parenting responsibilities, as I mentioned. We're ambitious for the future, when members from both unitaries will join together as a board to hold the Children's Trust to account. And it has been approved that there will be one corporate parenting board that will be looking across both unitary councils and dealing with the trust. So as the trust is one unit, it was felt appropriate that the corporate parenting board should be one unit, and we will work together as two unitary councils to make sure that the children in our both areas are looked after as well as they can be. And also it will give an opportunity for councillors to work in their areas in the future when we are without the COVID pandemic, to visit schools and actually have a more hands-on approach to being involved with our children that we are corporate parents for. So I'm happy to take questions, Chair, but I think the report is quite a good report and clearly lays out the situation for the corporate parenting board.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Birch. I know you're down on a number of other items, Councillor Birch, if you could try and keep it succinct and to the agenda item, if okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think this is a really, really interesting report, well written, very clear. And as a member of the Corporate Parenting Board, I'm very privileged to, be part of the representation for councillors on this board. What my question really is about COVID and the changes that will make to the young people in our care, and particularly to the young people that are care leavers. Their education training skills have probably been disrupted. They are going out into a world where unemployment is much more, there's a much higher risk for them. And I was wondering if, as corporate parents, we are thinking of ways that we can help these young people into their employment and their future training and education post-COVID, because I think the world has changed for them and they will need even more support from us. So that's really my question there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. I understand we've got Mrs. Lineker back with us, so we'll give Mrs. Lineker one more go if you'd like to come in. Mrs. Lineker. Any joy? Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Wendy Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. I agree. This is a very good report, and it's always very interesting to hear the voice of children and young people. I think we turn to page 25, really shows the amount of involvement they have, which include interview panels and some customer service training. So there really is a lot that they get involved with, and I think they should be congratulated on the work they do.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen.
Yeah, just on page 20, it just occurred to me that we talk about corporate parenting and about the responsibility of the authority to look after children until they turn 18. So I just wanted to ask Councillor Baker, the criteria in terms of what happens up to the age of 25. What is the difference between this sort of cut-off point of 18 and then 25? As I understand, we do have responsibilities up to that stage for some children, young adults.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Smithers, did you put your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to sort of come back with where Councillor Jane Birch has come in about the COVID challenges for the children and so on that are coming out of our services and are in our services. It's worth noting that this is just it's a UK issue. It's not just a Northamptonshire issue as well. So every authority up and down the country will be dealing with this, and I would like to think that governments will come and help come the end of this pandemic to sort of level out where we are with these individuals, because if you think it's just children that have started from a school age right through to university, and our looked after children and our vulnerable children. So it's affecting all children across the country. And I think that's just worth noting, and not just making, you know, the fact that it's a Northamptonshire issue, this, and that generally this is a really good report, and just for people to understand that this is a nationwide issue, not just a Northamptonshire issue.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. And I was going to pick up on that point around the life in lockdown part of the report, page 23. I know, and I think our service has responded exceptionally well. And what if Councillor Baker would like to comment on that? Councillor Baker, would you like to come back on any of the points raised?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say that the Department of Education have actually singled out Northamptonshire and congratulated us on the way that we have dealt with the COVID pandemic and the ways that the things that we've put in place to secure and help our children as much as possible. And this plan has been shared at the East Midlands leadership team meetings with other councils as being thought of by the Department of Education as good planning to go forward. And this is something that we at Northamptonshire should be congratulated on, that other areas think that we have done COVID well. Nobody can do COVID brilliantly. It's such an unknown thing, and it's really impossible to foresee what's going to happen for not only looked after children, but any young children and young people who are coming out of school, colleges, universities, to know what it is they're going to be doing in the future is very hard to predict for all of them. But what I would like to put out to all of the members on this call is to say, there are apprenticeship schemes available. We have one care leaver working in the county council in the virtual school at the moment on an apprenticeship scheme. And why do we not do more of this? Why do we not, those who are involved in businesses elsewhere or who know people in business elsewhere, promoting this to get our young care leavers into work through the apprenticeship scheme? And I would put that challenge out to all members as corporate parents.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Naden-Hawley, is there something that you wanted to, I missed your hand, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that even in adult education, we have been very proactive during the COVID pandemic, and we have been recognised for the excellent work that we've been doing with people online to keep them engaged and keep them interested and keep them giving them something to do. So I'd just like to reiterate that. And yes, the government did single out Northamptonshire as a centre of excellence, and it is going to go to East Midlands councils because I'm actually on that committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, Cabinet, are we happy to note the content of the report?
Can I just come back with one point? I forgot to answer Councillor Bowen's point. I'm very sorry. The statutory obligation is for us to look after children in care for up until the age of 18 and to cover all of their care arrangements for until that age. Between 18 and 25, we have a different role of a monitoring and supportive role to get those people into adult life safely and securely, we hope. So I hope that just clears up that issue that there are two age groups that we deal with.
Thank you. Cabinet, are we happy to agree the content of the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Move on to item 11, which is the additional funding for the Schools Minor Works 2021. Councillor Baker again.
Thank you. The local authorities receive a school condition allocation funding for maintenance to their maintained schools. NCC's allocation for 2021 was 2.813 million, and NCC are in the process of progressing condition works based on a rolling programme of condition surveys that have been committed by the County Council. We are progressing works at 24 county schools with this money. The tranche of works and approval for the expenditure for this money was approved in Cabinet in July 2020. In August 2020, central government announced that the local authorities would receive an initial allowance, funding for 2021. NCC's initial allowance for this funding was £1.3 million. So this has been added to the budget that we had previously. So this cabinet report is requesting approval to allow NCC to spend the additional grant funding and to delegate this to the Director of Children's Services and the lead member for children. It is important that we maintain our schools in the best condition possible so that our children have safe schooling. And we do know that across the county, we have some issues that need to be addressed. And this extra funding will go a long way towards helping to address some of those extra issues that weren't able to be dealt with in the initial funding we had to begin with. So I'm happy to take any questions, but I think it's quite a straightforward paper.
Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, is there an up-to-date condition survey of all our community and voluntary controlled and foundation schools in the county? And whose responsibility will this be in the 2 new unitary councils? Thank you.
Councillor Baker, are you able to answer that now?
I'm not actually, just to make sure I can find out that information. I've no idea to look into the future who's going to be responsible in the future, but that will be for the unitary councils to decide, because education eventually will be divided between the 2 new unitary councils. But I'm happy to ask the question about the survey on all of the maintained schools for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Cabinet, are we happy to agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
So move on to item 12. Councillor Baker again. Determination of the admission arrangements for the 2022 intakes in schools where Northamptonshire County Council is the admission authority.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise for having so many papers at this meeting. NCC is the admission authority for all community and voluntary controlled schools in Northamptonshire. We're responsible for setting admission arrangements for all of these schools. It's a statutory duty of the council to determine the admission arrangements for the schools by the 28th of February each year. So this just explains why we're doing this, when you might feel that the entrance for schooling that we're discussing here is actually going to fall into the 2 new unitary councils. But having had long discussions in months past about education, it has been decided that the education team will stay as one for the moment until all of these submissions for places have been addressed, because people apply early in the year for the following year, and we need to know that their very secure arrangements are in place to make sure that people do get the choices that they've asked for. And we have a very good record at the County Council of being able to get, I think 98% of people last time who applied got one of their first 3 choices, and one of the first 2 choices for most people who applied before the cut-off date. So we have a good record for that. We want to maintain that while we're going forward into 2 unitaries. So the education team will remain as one until all the 2022 admissions have been dealt with. They will then be divided into the 2 new unitaries. So just to explain why this is coming to us as a cabinet is because we'll be doing it in February, and also to say that this is a statutory obligation that we have to undertake. We are not making any changes to the system of admissions on that we had last year, so it does not need a consultation process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Birch.
Thank you. Thank you, it's me again. Just to say, I think, from my experience and reports back, this system does work well. My question really is about school places. There's a huge amount of house building going on throughout the county. And do we have sufficient school places in the short and medium term to accommodate all the children coming into our county? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just agree with Councillor Baker on that point around performance and that continued high level around the first and second choices that people generally achieve in Northamptonshire in terms of school allocation. Councillor Baker, is there anything? Can you answer Councillor Birch's question?
Well, I agree entirely with Councillor Birch that we are doing a lot of new house building. And I think one of the pluses that will come out of being unitary councils is that we will have planning authorities in the same area as we have education. Because in the past, it seemed to me, having been a past chairman of planning, that we give permission for house builders to build a primary school for us and have overlooked the fact that we've got a lot of teenagers therefore growing up and we need schools for them as well. I know that our schools team at the moment have a very, very active planning programme in place to look at secondary schools, because this is the area that we will have issues with, as we did have last year. But I'm assured by our team that for the coming year, because we have an idea of how many applications we're going to be getting, with the building progress that we put in place at an earlier cabinet meeting, we will have sufficient capacity for our children.
Thank you. Cabinet, are we happy to agree the reports?
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 13. Last one, Councillor Baker, Capital One Education Management System.
Yes, sorry. Sorry, I'm going to a different pack, sorry. Apologies. This is a key project to provide safe and legal services for 2 unitary councils. Moving the solution into a cloud will remove the constant challenges of maintaining the hardware and the environment in line with cyber essentials security standards. First of all, I just pause to say that my talents lie hopefully in helping our children, and my previous work was in art areas, so IT is not my best subject. But I have been assured by the team working on this that by approving this project, we will remove the challenges of maintaining the software to the latest version, as it will be maintained by Capita. Moving the solution into the cloud will provide a secure and a resilient solution managed by Capita. It will help improve support and reduce downtime for the service in the future, and will make any future decisions for the unitary councils easier to implement. Taking 2 copies of the system and deleting data to provide 2 functioning systems is the least risky approach to migrating the 2 systems. Capita have committed to delivery based on connecting in November 2020. It will first of all go for 1 system, but the arrangement is that we are putting plans in place that, because the council has got more months to run yet, we will be putting it in place to run as 1 system to start with and dividing into 2 systems as soon as the unitary councils are up and running. So if there are any questions on this, I will have to refer back to our IT team, because as I've said, IT is not my preferred subject.
I think we've got some technical experts in our room if we need them. Okay, Councillor Birch.
You're muted, Councillor.
I think I'll pass on this one too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't think there's anything else to add unless there's other comments from Cabinet colleagues. Councillor Smithers.
Yeah, it's just encouraging to see in this report that it does state that the second challenge is from April 2021. The system will need to be split into 2 separate incidents to support the legal requirements set out in the formation of the Northern and West Unitaries, with a schools administration window running until the 15th of April 2021. This will be scheduled to run on the 16th of April 2021. So I think that's quite encouraging, and sort of puts people's minds at rest that the system can be split at a relatively low cost.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. Councillor Baker, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think not.
Yeah. Cabinet, we're happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Excellent, thank you. We'll move on to item 14. That is the Care Home Commissioning Intentions, Residential and Nursing Care Services for older people aged 65 and over, and that's Councillor Morris.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just very quickly, before I come on to the paper, I just wanted to answer a question that Councillor Birch put about health visiting. Health visitors are commissioned by Public Health directly. So if you do have any specific questions about that, if you wouldn't mind either directing them to me or to our Director of Public Health, Lucy Whiteman. Thank you very much. I just thought I'd mention that at the start of the paper. Thank you. So the paper you have before you, the key sort of points really are that, number one, it's important to note that this has been to the chief executives and leaders of the 2 new unitaries. So they are obviously aware of the contents of the paper. So the point of the paper is to outline commissioning intentions for purchasing some sustainable and affordable supply of residential and nursing care home services for the future to new unitaries. So the approval that we're seeking today is to extend the existing care home framework until the 31st of August 2021 and to continue to develop the service and to engage with the market to enable further consideration by the new unitaries prior to procurement, because it would be a very short run for them to come straight into this in May, and this allows stability in the market. It's interesting to note that we currently we fund externally commissioned care home services for about 1,244 older people aged 65 and over. There's a strong supply of care home services across the county with over 6,000 beds across 246 care homes, with relatively even supply across the west and north, which I thought was an interesting point. It's fairly evenly split. And there's about an 18% vacancy rate in that market at the moment, which means that the market is fairly good from our perspective in terms of commissioning, which is why it's a good idea that we extend this currently. So it'll allow us to develop further future services and also to take into account the impact of COVID-19, which clearly is going to have some impact across the county in terms of provision of care. As I said, we've currently got 2 main contracts that run in parallel with different end dates and fee rate structures. So this has led to some inconsistencies in the managing of the market and access to supply, and means that effectively costs can vary across the piece. So this piece of work will hopefully pin the market down and pin the cost down. So there can be quite wide variances in price and cost across the west and the north, as it were. So this work will help inform a very solid rate structure that would be hopefully acceptable to both unitaries, and will help build our future supply for those unitaries, which I think is a really key point. So, Chair, I mean, that's the recommendations are there. That, in a nutshell, is the paper. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. I've got a number of concerns about this area of work, not particularly with the report, because I can see that it's just a very pragmatic one, but can I say that what I would have hoped for was this report contextualised within a wider strategy so that we had an understanding of where we were going in terms of provision for elderly, frail people. And I've been hoping for many, many years, as you will be aware, that we would have a strategy for us to look at, to hold people accountable to, which included building in-house provision. And I think that's really, really important. So particularly when we look at what's happened with COVID in our care homes. So one of the things that's happened is that we have been unable to intervene where part-time staff travel between different homes. That is a huge risk in these COVID times, that we cannot mitigate against. It's not in our gift to do so. So my understanding is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that in 2010, 75% of our care homes were in-house, and now 75% are in the open market. And can I just say, you know, it chills me slightly to hear the language that is used around this. We are a public service, we are a public authority, we are public servants. We provide services. The market, you know, is a private enterprise. We should be providing quality services, and we should have a grip on what the need is, what the provision needs to be. And in saying that, you know, my disappointment is transformation. I was so hoping, you know, somewhere along the line before Unitary Hand, we would be given an indication of what a transformed service was really going to look like. We know a little bit about the technology that's coming in to support, which is fine. But, you know, if we want to keep more old people at home, then we need to look at things like social isolation. And so it's not just about technology, is it? It's about what access older people have to their community, to day centres, to peer groups. I need to have more information, and I'd like this more contextualised. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we bring Councillor Morris back, I'll just ask the Chief Exec to comment.
Thank you, Leader. Just to say, Councillor Stone, that I'm encouraged to hear you're so enthusiastic about transformation, because actually that's what adults are and have been doing for some time, and I have to say doing it to a really professional and great degree in this county. A really good example, and better than most examples I've seen across the country, and I think it's been recognised as such. And you'll be familiar, of course, with the work that Newton came in to do. And that work continues, and that will change the way we deliver our care services to ensure that more people can stay at home. We're also doing some work with the other health colleagues, with the acute and other colleagues as well. That will also mean that people will avoid hospital admissions where they're unnecessary, and we will put better services in place at the front door so that they can remain at home and support them more effectively to remain at home. So that transformation work is ongoing, and it is, I have to say, a really, really good piece of work. In terms of care homes, again, I think we're fairly creative with how we approach that, and not least how we're challenging the PFIs that exist around some of our provision. And, you know, that's been a difficult task, and I'd hope that in the not too distant future we'll be able to have a public statement around some of that. But we are doing very creative and transformational things with our care provision. All of this is focused on our customer, our residents, and ensuring they get the best possible support they can get, but in their own homes, which we all appreciate is the best outcome for them.
Thank you. And I'll just echo that point. The whole heart of what the adult service is looking at the moment is around transformation and having the best interests of not only NCC, but the new unitaries at heart, but more importantly, the outcomes of the residents that we're supporting. And I think an immense amount of really good work has been going on over the last couple of years, led by Anna. And it's good that Anna's in the position she's in as we move into the new unitary to keep an eye on that, encourage more, and make sure we deliver best value for the unitaries, but more importantly for the residents that we're all there to serve. Councillor Morris, would you like to comment on any of the points?
Yeah, I mean, I would obviously echo what yourself and the Chief Executive have said, but what I would say is that, and I think I repeat myself, but at the cost of repeating myself, but this is the whole point of this pause, is to allow a strategy to be formulated by the West and the North unitaries going forward, and to build on the work that Teresa has mentioned with the target operating model and the very good work that's going on within the adult social care section. In-house provision, as you know, Councillor Stone, we have looked at that in a number of ways over the years. And I think indeed we probably would have brought in more provision had we not been on the journey to unitary. And again, I would stress that I think it is something that the unitaries now are tasked with, to have a look at the provision within the West and the North, and to look at bringing as much of, or as what is possible in-house in order to help control the market. But as I did say in the opener, we are very much in control of the market at the moment, because there's actually an oversupply of beds, but that won't necessarily continue. So I do agree there does need to be a plan going forward, but there almost certainly will be one. And there is one in the target operating model, as Teresa has outlined, which will encourage more people to be at home, etc. You did mention part-time staff moving between homes, and I know this is an issue that we've tackled at the Oversight and Engagement Board on various occasions. There is some problem with staff moving between homes, but in the private sector, because of course we can't necessarily tell them that they're not supposed to, well, we can tell them they're not supposed to do that, but that doesn't necessarily mean they won't. So that is an area that is of concern, but it has certainly been tightened up through our cell that deals with the care homes, and will be tightened up further going forward. I don't think you should be chilled by the language of the report, Councillor Stone, if I may say, because I think it shows an immense grip on the situation and the market, and will help to inform both the unitaries going forward and put them in a very good position to be in a much better place in terms of costs and placements and at-home care and all those things that we all passionately care about in the adult social service section. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Smithers, did you want to add a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit of what Ian Morris actually covered. I mean, Councillor Stone, you used words like chilled and concerned. I would suggest, if you are chilled and concerned, that you put an email over to Councillor Morris, the portfolio holder, to air those issues, where I'm sure, you know, with Ian and the officer team that's behind him would be able to put your mind at rest, and rather than having to wait to a cabinet session like this to make comments of that nature, where you could have it dealt with, you know, quite quickly to put your mind at rest.
Thank you. Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to item 15, which is a community-based approach to addressing health inequalities in Northamptonshire. There's two public speakers. We've got Ms. Jessica Slater. Is Ms. Slater on the line?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you. If you could address this, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, so I'm Jess Slater. I speak on behalf of the charity Serve. I represent older people and people with disabilities in East Northants and the Wellingborough districts. I'm concerned about this proposal and what it would mean for communities and people who use the service at the moment. So before this is nodded through, I just think there's a couple of questions I'd like to answered. This is a duplication of what the primary care networks are already doing and what the social prescribing contract will be delivering when it gets up and running. So I question why we need to employ a further 3 development workers who are no doubt doing similar work to what those other organisations are currently doing or will be doing, taking a large chunk of the value off the funding with very little left to support grassroots works in the community. Tiny pots of grant funding are hardly sustainable. They don't work in the long term. I'm questioning what it is actually going to achieve. But most importantly, my question I want to ask before, again, this is nodded through, is why we not listen to the public and what was the point of the public consultation? There's a clear indication that older people are worried about this funding disappearing from the survey results. On the full consultation report, which I accessed today, East Northants is not even mentioned as needing any support, and I can assure you it does. 300 people used this service at Serve before the pandemic. During the pandemic, 876 shopping trips, 447 prescription collections, 3,901 wellbeing calls, 608 ad hoc services. I mean, and that means bereavement and ongoing support. So I do believe this proposal is premature, and I call on you to question it And what about what's going to be in place on the 1st of April for older people in East Northants? Where is the sustainability? Serve receive at the moment £100,000, just over, per annum, which has been cut from 150. We've already had a 50 grand cut. This will be a cliff edge for our service users, and I would like to know what's going to bridge the gap. If social prescribing is going to bridge the gap, when is that going to start? I know the contract hasn't been signed yet. Is it the 1st of April? Is it likely to be signed? And finally, I just want to mention that SERVE have been the main provider of COVID-19 response services to the East Northants Resilience Hub. We have done the lion's share of the work. Hasn't this pandemic highlighted the importance of funding for older people? Hasn't the public consultation survey results highlighted the importance of funding for older people? It should be ring-fenced. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. And then we've got Miss Deepa Bakrana, if I've pronounced the name right.
Hi, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Deepa Bakrania. I speak on behalf of Dostio Asian Women's and Girls Organization. And I would like to, my question is, as a contract holder, what consideration has been made to mitigate the adverse impact and uncertainty to organizations like ours, providing crucial services to the BAME communities in Northamptonshire, who might not sustain with the withdrawal of this investment? You know, we won't be able to provide any services. And have you considered the impact on BAME groups in deprived areas? Have you considered the additional need due to the current COVID situation? Because we've had to go above and beyond to address the need. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll ask Councillor Morris if you could introduce the report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I will come to those specific points that were raised at the end, if I may. But I would like to start by saying the voluntary service is enormously important to everyone in this room and everyone in this county. So I wouldn't want people to think that we don't believe in the voluntary service. It is a very vital part of one of the things that we do well in this county, and it's something that we want to see continue to help with everything that we do in the county. So I'll report the paper and then I will come back, because I think some of what I will say will resonate in terms of those answers. So you have the paper before you. As we know, this contract was in fact extended by a year, approximately a year ago, in order to give parties that were originally part of the contract with Consortia the chance to look at how they may apply for funding under a new arrangement, or to help them smooth their way out of the contract, if you see what I mean. So that's the first point to make. The second point to make is that, in fact, this is actually embedding people into our localities in order to deliver these vital services and community-based approaches. So, for instance, what we're doing differently is that we're going to have 3 people in the north and 3 people in the south working within the hubs that will be set up by Adult Social Care across the county. And I believe there's one being trialled in South Northants already, one of the hubs, and I believe that's gone very successfully. So you can't get much closer. You would very close to the community by working with those. The idea is that those community workers will reach out to the community and reach out to the areas in the community, such as your groups that were referred to, such as SERVE and others, in order to see if they can qualify for the funding. So no one is saying the funding isn't available. The funding is available for voluntary services within the county, provided they meet the criteria for the grant, as it were. And in terms of the actual service, if you look at the fees, the money, so there's £900,000 in the current contract, and 700,000 of that will directly be granted out to community services, etc. So I think it would be wrong to say that it's not going to go into the community. Many of the community workers already exist in the districts and boroughs, and they will simply move to the new unitaries as well in those hubs. So it's worth noting that they're already working in the communities. So I would mention also places like the Autumn Centre, and I know John McGee is a particular and very welcome advocate for places like that. They are a shining example of what can be done within the community. And I have to say that the intention will always be to work with that centre on many levels through this fund or through any other funding that may or may not become available. So it's also worth mentioning that the social prescribing funds that Ms. Slater referred to amount to about 3.4 million over 6 years. So if you add together the 3.4 million plus the 900,000 in here, in this paper here, we're actually spending more than we've ever probably spent on these sort of services. So it is worth putting that in context. I think that's probably as much as I can say at the moment, Chair. I'm very happy to take questions from anyone. I will still come back to Ms. Slater as well, if I may, after any further questions.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Morris. So we've got Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian, for that explanation. But it still leaves a lot of uncertainty for the voluntary sector, especially the ones that are there now. I've looked at the Autumn Centre's exit plan with officers of Corbie Borough Council, and a lot's optimistic. We don't believe that without that funding, they will survive. And you know, you've been to the centre, as has Lizzie, the fantastic work that they would do. Now, you mentioned that there will still be funding available. How much is that funding, say, for the North? Exactly how much will that be? And we're taking 200,000 away from that funding to employ people. That is a duplication. The reason it's a duplication, has been said, is that this should be joint working with social care, the CCG, public health. The three of them should be joint commissioning. We're not at that place yet, and this was a great opportunity to be at that place, and that would have gave the stability that our voluntary sector needs, because they need that stability. Just now, they don't know what's going to happen come April, and that means they may be laying staff off that they need to help our older people in our society, the people that each organisation helps. So we need some clarification of exactly how that's going to work. But I would go further, Ian, and I would go further, and I would suggest that this should not happen in April. This should be put back and give the two unitaries the opportunity to make that decision. That's their role, and that is real localism, not county-wide localism. That is looking at our towns. Now, this council, and I'm not going to go back in history, has made some silly decisions and bad decisions. This is an opportunity now to stop what could be a bad decision for the people of Northamptonshire as a whole. And we can defer this to let the unitaries make their own decision on this. We need all three organisations, the unitaries, social care and public health, to do joint commissioning so that they've got a long-term future and know how they'll be sustained in the long term. So I would ask that we stop this now, defer it, and we leave the unitaries to do it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Councillor Bowen, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on a couple of things, actually. Jessica Slater, the lady that spoke to start with, mentioned about nodding this through. I just wanted to reassure her, and probably others, that it hasn't been nodded through. We've actually debated, discussed, consulted considerably on this. But what I would say is that, and Councillor McGee's touched on it, it's about the security of annual funding, which I know reflects the allocations in public health. But I would hope that once we've gone through unitary, that that certainty can be looked at so that those contracts aren't possibly annual, but there is a little bit more of a lifespan on those contracts to give the volunteers that certainty. That was all.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Brackenbury, did I see you and you wanted to comment on this or not?
Yes, please, Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
As an East Northants councillor, I am aware of the good work that SERVE and other voluntary agencies do in the community. But I am pleased to say that at the moment, East Northants Council gives SERVE and Voluntary Action and the Consortium £20,000 towards transport solution for medical trips as a priority. And at the Policy and Resources Committee in September, East Northants approved in principle an extension to our current community support grants with the voluntary sector organisations that we give at the moment. And we have made a recommendation to the North Northants Shadow Authority. So I think going forward, there's no reason why applications can't be made to the unitary authorities once they're set up. And I know we'll be looking at that in the 2021-22 budget for the recommendations that East Northants put forward.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, is there anything you'd like to come back on or add?
Yes, I mean, Councillor Brackenbury sort of alluded to it, as did Councillor Bowen, but this has not been nodded through. We've been spending a year approximately looking into this matter and extended the funding deliberately for that year in order to smooth the changes that may or may not come. We've also done an extensive public consultation which overwhelmingly did show that actually people did want to see these people based in the communities in the adult hubs, the adult social care hubs and places like that. So I share Councillor McGee's and everyone. We all want to see these vital sectors supported even more, and I think it is incumbent upon all of us as councillors, as we go forward to the new unitaries, to start, for want of a better word, lobbying on behalf of such communities to, as Lizzie Bowen said, to guarantee some funding from the councils for those very, very good works that they do. And I don't think anyone would want to not see that happen. Just as a point, we are working very closely with the social prescribing the element, the 3.4 million, is very much a jointly commissioned piece of work between us and the CCGs. So we are already doing a lot of that, and a lot of that will start to come online in the next sort of year or so, I would imagine, if not sooner. So I think I will leave it there. I would echo, of course, the importance of SERVE and the importance of the other group that was speaking earlier in their communities. But they can apply for these funds through the community officers that will be in place, and there is no definite answer as to whether they will or will not get them, because obviously they'll have to meet the criteria. But should they meet the criteria, then they would be funded from that funding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. And I think there were some good points made there, but I'm satisfied that we agree this afternoon, and that's the right thing to do moving forward. So, Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. So we move on to item 16, is the update on Chester Farm.
I'm not trying to give him that joy, but the sort of way he's interacting, and he's always been like that, Pete. So you're not the only one.
We're getting a bit of interference. Could everybody check, please? Are we okay?
You saw it.
Okay. Item 16, the update on Chester Farm.
And
Councillor Bowen.
I think his attitude is.
We still have the interference, Chair.
Anyway, that's the impression he gives me. And you know the.
Yes, Councillor Law.
Are we good to go?
I think we're good to go.
Yes, let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about Chester Farm, which I'm also going to talk about the rebranding of this project, which is incredibly exciting. But what I wanted to do is first of all explain why you've got extra paperwork this morning, in addition to the documentation that you received before. And there's a very good reason for that. We want to ensure that everybody understands exactly what is going on with this very, very complex process. It involves a number of organisations, including the Heritage Lottery Fund, HE, Netscape, Rural Payments, and obviously NCC. And it is quite complicated in terms of funding. And it was felt that because we're in the middle of the tender process and things are moving all the time and have moved in the last week, that we just need to do an update since the documentation was posted online, so that you all are absolutely clear where we're at. And I think you'd agree that is the right move to take at this stage, given how long this project has been going on. So the first point I would like to make is that this paper will go to both the North and the West executives for discussion, consultation and agreement. So that's very important because whilst the North will host this, the decisions are joint at the moment through NCC, but at the end of the day, this will be the responsibility of the North Unitary. And I'm very sad about that, because obviously I will be in the West Unitary if I do get elected, and I've invested a lot of time and effort and emotional support to this project, and I feel very passionately about it, and I know it's going to be an incredible asset to this county, and I wish to reassure you of that. So what this revised recommendation does is, I'm going to go through each bit so you're absolutely clear. First of all, it endorses the updated business plan. Now, many of you have seen the old business plan, and this is a revision to that. And in that business plan, we will be changing the name from Chester Farm to Chester House Estate. And the reason for that is because, as the Heritage Lottery Fund quite rightly said, we will not be able to have large animals, large farm animals on this farm, because that would affect the ground and the soil and the composite of the artefacts below, which obviously is a very important aspect of this project for NCC. The other point is that actually Chester House is the historical name for this site. So we are reverting back to what it was. The next thing is that on our revised recommendations, we are asking for you to support the proposed media launch. You'll see in the original documentation that it said the 1st of December. Now, obviously, since this was published, we've had the lockdown with COVID come to light, and also the HLF are very keen for us to just take stock of the tender process, to endorse the new branding, which they're very excited about, and also hopefully support us in an extra £700,000 on top of the £4 million that they've already given us. So that is the reason for the delay in the launch. The next thing that I want to remind you about, and I did actually, and I remember it vividly, mention it last December, was this £850,000, which is due to be received from the bondholder for Shayna, which was the original property developer that went into liquidation. I could go on and on about that whole liquidation process, but basically that's money due to us and will be put into this project. The next area that I want to talk about is a technical adjustment. Okay, so that's number 4, and that's about the capital budget of 722,000 in respect of the Heritage Lottery grant. And that was previously assigned to the revenue account, and that's now going to go into the capital budget. And then point number 5, which is very exciting for us, and I think that shows confidence by the Heritage Lottery Fund, although it is by no means signed off yet, is the approval of a further uplift of the capital budget by £700,000 in anticipation of further Heritage Lottery grants. So we are hopeful that we're going to get that grant, but I do have to ask you for endorsement today, and obviously also by the North and the West, that should we not get that grant, then we then have to make a decision. Either we do a number of phases of this exciting development, or we perhaps don't and have to modify. I hope we don't have to get to that stage, I really don't, because the bits that would be the finishing touches, if you like, the plus of this whole project would be the ones that suffer. But we are hopeful, and the HLF have given us positive endorsement on that extra money. So the other point to highlight is the completion. Now, those in Cabinet will be able to tell you that I have been pushing hard to get the completion before October, but we have to be realistic here given the fact that we haven't actually appointed the contractor yet. However, I can say that we will have the ARC over in Chester House Estates by February or thereabouts, which will mean that we will then mitigate those costs associated with having it elsewhere. And that's a real positive. But I can assure you, my Cabinet, and Kerry, who's the Chief Responsible Officer in this project, and Jack Bishorn, who is the Business Development Manager, are really, really pushing to get as much completed as early as possible. So that's that. The next thing I just wanted to highlight before I go to questions is 3.5 of the revised, 3.4 on the new handout that you would have all received this morning. And I just wanted to highlight about the construction works, because the original construction works, the pre-tender estimate, otherwise known as a PTE, was about 2.5 million. And obviously that has gone up. And I just wanted to tell you why that's gone up and what we're trying to do to mitigate it. The largest part of that increase is to do with the mechanicals and electricals. And that is 600,000 over the pre-tender estimate. And the reason for that is due to the fact that Shayla went into liquidation and we were left with a mechanical and electrical project that the current electrical contractor is going to have to take on board, and obviously needs to make up the loss that he did not get from Shayla. Now, if we go with another electrical supplier, we do not get the warranty. So we are between a rock and a hard place, if you like, on that one. But I can assure you that the preferred contractor is doing an awful lot of work on site at the moment to try and drive down that tender price so that it is as near to the pre-tender estimate as we can possibly get it. So what I'm trying to say to you today is I'm trying to reassure you that we are doing everything we can to keep this within the budgets that have already been identified. We have a clear plan for a sustainable future for the site. We have to continue to support the site, and we have an obligation as a county to support that site. We will be pioneering on the educational and also on the community participation to benefit our local communities for generations to come. That, with the restaurants, the artisan shops, the museums, 2 wedding venues, the bed and breakfast, and that lovely River Nen with all the cycling and the walking and the moorings and the bridges going up to the Chester House Estate, will be something that this county will be proud of. We're offering free parking, and our access levels are from 4 to 104. So we are widening the audience of who can actually appreciate this site for generations to come. And our profit levels are just much higher than they were originally in the original projections. So there is a positive to us delaying this whole business plan. So the other final point, and I hope I haven't been rambling on here, is that we've had a lot of support that has not been paid for by the Heritage Lottery Fund, by Nenscape, by all sorts of outside bodies like universities and schools and colleges, Malton Agricultural College, you name it. There's been so much support for this project that we really, really do feel very positive that we will get there, and we will get there very soon.
Well done. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. So I've got a number of people indicating to speak. So if we could just try and keep the comments succinct, because we've been going, coming up a good couple of hours now, if that's okay. So got Councillor Strachan first.
Thank you, Chairman. I must say that I have not seen the extra paper that has been referred to today. Chairman, we have always argued that this project was ill-conceived and completely unsound. An ambition of one man, the prior leader of this council, And today we have our current deputy leader having the unfortunate task of trying to tidy up something this country should never have got involved in the very first place. Inadequate business planning from the start has meant additional funds have had to be found. The investment in Chester Farm stands in stark contrast to the lack of investment and neglect in Grendon Hall. Grendon was gifted to this county for use as an outdoor educational center, the type of facility that is needed more than ever now to provide activities for children and young people. Yet it has been mothballed. Our children have been deprived of this service while the empty building is costing us money. We do have some sympathy with what is being proposed in this report, but we are convinced the figures given in the business plan does not stack up. They are unsound, especially when one considered the unprecedented economic climate our country and the rest of the world is facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stamborough.
Hello there, thank you very much, Chair. So I'm here to sort of gently ask you whether you think this project is value for money or not, or indeed whether it's ever been value for money. And I'll tell you why I pose that question. Firstly, the decision today is going to put yet more money into the project. It may not be our money, but more money is going to be put into the project today. And from what Councillor Bowen said about the hard work that's being done by the contractor to get near to the pre-contract estimate, maybe further monies to go in just yet, which I think qualifies it as for what's called a money pit. Is it viable? Well, no, it's not viable. The business plan that's set out in the papers today clearly shows that if the council doesn't put in a contribution, the project loses money every year, every single year. And I have to say that if the North Unitary has £180,000 to spare to put into a project, it wouldn't be this one. There are many better ways to spend that sort of money every year. So it's not viable. We have been told in the past that we had to keep going because we would lose lottery funding. Yes, we would have done, but up until 2017, we've drawn down very little of that lottery funding. We could have pulled out then, saved ourselves some money overall, and only had to hand back a small proportion of the lottery grant. We're also told that somehow we have a legal obligation to do this because we have to preserve and maintain the site's heritage. We have no legal obligation to do all the building works that we're going to do and to construct a visitor centre and units for rental and so on. We have a legal obligation to preserve the site, but we can do that by leaving it alone and not disturbing it at all. So it's a money pit. It's not viable. We could and should have pulled out. There's no legal requirement to do what we're doing now. So it's not value for money. Do you agree? And if not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stamborough. I've got Councillor Lorman.
That's your booking.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'm going to speak in support and welcome this report and the continued support that the council has given to this unique site. It's a scheduled monument, SSSI, and officers have put a lot of work in. It could be said that bad luck goes in threes. It's had a fire, it had the Shaler collapse, and it's had COVID. Well, let's hope that there's three elements of good luck now, which is the Nenscape project are supporting it. I'm pleased to say that the Borough Council of Wellingborough has approved the application, the planning application for the pontoon mooring on the river to give better access, and also the extra funds from the Heritage Lottery Fund are a great result. I think time has actually meant that we now have a better and more exciting business plan with education, well-being, connectivity along the Nen Valley, events, much better business plan than it was before. I did notice that some of the social media is already calling it Chester House, so that transformation is already taking place. I did actually wonder whether another thing, those who read the Times will have seen that there's a problem with the Malcolm Arnold Archives, and I wonder this is a good site for to offer to take the Malcolm Arnold Archives, which obviously have Northamptonshire connotations. I look forward to the launch, and I think this will be a good legacy for the North Northamptonshire. There are many sites that have been looked after in Northampton. Delaprey Abbey is one, and it's nice to have one out with the town that the North can have as a central part of the Len and the tourism near to Rushton Lakes, which is soon to be expanding, I would believe, and near the extension, Stanton Cross extension of Wellingborough, to make a great tourist focal point and a great centre for to come. Thank you.
And I found that.
Thank you, Councillor Lorman. Councillor Hakewell.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say I didn't see anything about this going to scrutiny in the report anywhere. And as a farmer's son, we've had 10,000 years of various heavy farm animals walking across it. I'm not sure that 10 months is going to make a difference. I'm deeply concerned that this project, which has been beset by delays and increasing costs for nearly 20 years, will be a significant burden for the North Northamptonshire Unitary Council. I appreciate that a great deal of enthusiasm and effort has gone into the proposals and business plan, but it is simply the wrong time to be actively pursuing this project, as others like Winston have said. Whilst it was always questionable if the project was viable for the whole county to finance, I'm convinced it's certainly not viable for half of the county in the form of the new North Unitary. The only way it's shown as viable, and look at the business plan, is for there to be a contribution of £180,000 per annum from NCC. No mention of the unitary in the port whatsoever at all, who will pick up the extra cost next year. The sort of project is more sensibly the remit of English Heritage or the National Trust. It's not the everyday business of a council in the best of times, let alone at a time when we are being hit by the costs of managing the COVID pandemic and the uncertain costs of local government reorganisation, both of which will impact council taxpayers' ability to fund the scheme. The report shows on page 25 that the relevant scrutiny committee has not been consulted on the new business plan, let alone about the financial implications of a further uplift of £700,000 in the capital budget, which was only published today at 11 o'clock, as the portfolio holder says. The report also proposes that car parking charges will not be levied, which puts the enjoying countryside element in competition and conflict with other Northamptonshire country parks who do charge for car parking. At a time when wedding venues are struggling with the effects of COVID, the proposal is to compete with them by holding weddings. It's not the council's business to compete with the hard-pressed private venues. In the same vein, the council is not a provider of open market bed and breakfast accommodation. So I'm not sure of the current status of Grendon and Noston halls, but clearly both were difficult venues to run profitably, with many reports and alternative ways of making them economic, not achieving that goal at all. In relation to preserving of the historical element, I do not think, as I said earlier, there's a need to rush this through. The historical element will wait a few more months, given it's been waiting for 10,000 years. You'll know exactly what I've got. I did send it through. When the notes that the original contractor went bust, and only one bidder came
If you can finish off, Councillor Hakewell, that's 3 minutes.
There are red flags over this proposal. The financial implications of this report should be studied and tested in very great detail
everybody else sticks to the
before
3
any
minute rule.
decisions are taken.
Right.
I really
Baker?
think a few minutes for one councillor to make his point is.
We've got your note, Councillor Hakewell, and I think Councillor Bowen. Yeah, Councillor Baker.
Thank you. I think Councillor Bowen stole my thunder a little in her enthusiasm for explaining all of the different things that were going to be available on this site. But I would actually personally like to congratulate Councillor Bowen on taking up this project with difficulties and working very, very hard to bring it on to a stage where we can see an end result. I believe this is going to be a really great resource and visitor attraction for our county. It sits in the North Unitary, as we all hear, but it will be accessible to all of Northamptonshire. The schools, the university, colleges will be able to study the archaeology of the Roman farm, as visitors will be able to take advantage of the many proposed amenities, wedding venues, cafe, artisan shops, cycling, canoeing, and many, many more things. Putting this venue on the map as a must visit location. I think the idea of having commercial activities on the site is actually going to make it more viable in the future, because it will give income to the site, which otherwise it wouldn't have. And this will enable it to be able to be self-funding in the future. I think that we have a situation where we had this given to us as a project, which some of us weren't here at the time. Some of us on this call now were there at the time when this was originally proposed. So I think we need to take it on board now, accept where we are with it, thank Councillor Bowen for all her very passionate work that she's done on it, and make it the best that we can to make it a really good venue for Northamptonshire to be proud of in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smithers.
Yeah, I'd like to re-echo pretty much what Councillor Baker said about Councillor Bowen's passion to this project and the officers that have supported her in delivering where we've got to thus far. It was a bit of a legacy issue, this project, and Councillor Bowen has picked this up and run with it, efficiently. There's a clear plan for a sustainable future for the venue, which is a long way away where it was, a year ago. And I just also wanted to pick up on Councillor Hakewell's speech. I mean, and he again can also, he has a lot of concerns, a lot of issues regarding this particular locations. He can put an email into anybody who can deal with those concerns, rather than having to overstep his 3 minutes allocated time at this cabinet meeting, emphasise on the word cabinet meeting. But I'm sure Councillor Bowen would be more than happy to address his concerns via email.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. Councillor Bowen.
Well, I don't really have a lot to add. I mean, what I was going to say was going to Winston Strachan's comment about Grindon Hall. Well, it's been sold. I can't remember when it was sold, but it was sold some time ago.
4 months ago.
4 months ago. So time moves fast, doesn't it? So Winston, first of all, I'd like to say I would love to be able to show you around the site and
Mute, Councillor Bowen. Sorry, you've gone on mute.
Sorry, that's my fault. Sorry, Lizzie.
Well, it probably was irrelevant anyway. All I'd like to say is I extend the offer to invite everybody round to the site at a time appropriate in the new year to show you what is going to be happening. I would say to Councillor Higgs, the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, was informed of the update of the change to the business plan last week, has not commented and did have the opportunity to input at that stage. I maintain that when I took it on less than a year and a half ago, it was what it was, and I did not have the options to change it in terms of the lottery funding, and have made the best of what I think will be an amazing asset to this county.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. I don't think there is anything further to add, and I think this is the right thing to be doing at the moment. So I'll just ask Cabinet. Councillor Smithers, very briefly.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to clarify a point to Councillor Hakewell. Were you not the chair of the scrutiny committee when this was put forward for the Chester Farm project? I just wondered if you'd like to elaborate a little bit on an email, obviously, to Councillor Bowen.
Yeah, and just one more point. Councillor Councillor Strachan and Councillor Stanborough have not asked to meet with me, talk to me at all about this project. And, that offer is always there, and I'd rather them do that first than vent their frustrations at a cabinet meeting when they have all the facts in front of them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to support the point around Councillor Bowen and the energy that she's put into this and making the best of the current situation. So, Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. So we move on to item 17, which is the modern slavery paper. Councillor Naden Hawley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Cabinet. I just want to ask Cabinet this afternoon to approve the statement on the modern slavery as a position statement for Northamptonshire County Council. The statement confirms that Northamptonshire County Council's actions to ensure there is no slavery or human trafficking in its own business and that of any supply chain for the financial year 2020-21. This is in compliance with the Modern Slavery Act of 2015, Section 54 of the Modern Slavery Act. And it places a requirement on all commercial organisations with a turnover in the excess of 36 million per annum to publish an annual slavery and human trafficking statement to confirm what they have done in the year to address the risks to human rights in their supply chains. The statement had been commenced previously. However, like a lot of things that the council has had to face in recent months, due to the impact of the consequences of the COVID pandemic and the transfer of resources to these really important roles, this was unable to be completed. The transfer of these resources remains ongoing, therefore no timescale was known for the completion of the statement. However, there has been a recent increase in available resources in the emergency planning service because we've taken on some more people, and this work has now been completed. Therefore, the statement has been reviewed and rewritten for compliance and completion for the fiscal year 2020-21. Consequently, the statement has not previously appeared on the forward plan due to the statutory implications. This is being presented now for consideration at the earliest opportunity. The report is now being dealt with under the general exception rule of NCC's constitution, and all requirements pertaining to this rule have been complied with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we've got Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. There was an act in 2010 with the further act in 2015. Mr. Chairman, fellow councillors, modern slavery is a plague in our society. October the 18th this year was the Modern Slavery Day, and we learned that since 2012 there had been an increase of 47% in known victims, yet only 34 convictions. This is another bit of legislation, I fear, that's very similar to the Equal Pay Act in the sort of advances it's been able to make over the period. I mean, there were something like 1,700 companies that were required to observe this legislation that still haven't done so. So it shows a lack, in my view, of really following up this legislation and making it properly work. But I do have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman. I mean, on page 5, the performance indicators, we talk about the effectiveness of the steps that our county council take to ensure modern slavery and human trafficking is not taking place, and things like a thorough investigation of all allegations, complaints, whistleblowing reports and safeguarding referrals received from employers, members of the general public or law enforcement agencies. how many complaints or whistleblowing or allegations or safeguarding referrals have we actually had in the last 12 months? Perhaps we should do something on that. And perhaps I could ask for more publicity on the subject, so that people at large do start to recognise the signs and do start to report these sort of incidents, which I know we all find abhorrent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Nadenhall, are you able to answer any of those points there?
All I can say, Chair, is that I can get those figures for Councillor Scott after this meeting. And we are aware of, as an organisation, we are fulfilling our duty to provide the statement, and what other companies do. If that needs looked into, then I'm sure we can do some work to do that in the future. But of course, this is all being kept behind the scenes because of COVID, but it is something that's definitely going to be looked in now that we have more resources in the department.
Okay, thank you. So Cabinet, are we happy to agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to the end of the main part of the agenda of our meeting this afternoon. So Paul Hanson, do you want to finish the YouTube recording?
Just read a statement, Chair.
Okay, so I'll do that. So we've got one more item, but we need to resolve that under section 100A of the Local Government Act to 1972, the public will be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that if the public were present, it would likely be that exempt information under Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act of the descriptions against each item would be disclosed to them. So Cabinet, are we happy to take that resolution?